Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents In My DNA, My Career Investigating Your Worst Nightmares by Lindsey Wade. Narrated by Patricia Santomasso. Chapter 1. Bump in the Night. Dad! There was a man in my room! It's difficult to recall most memories from my early childhood, but a typical evening would have gone something like this. My dad was frying a batch of Dover sole dipped in egg wash and Japanese breadcrumbs for my mom and me. Dad was the chef in our family, and while I liked his cooking, I hated that my hair smelled of fried fish after he made this dish. Our kitchen table was a large wooden oval shape with a removable leaf and 4 rolling chairs made of beige vinyl. I rolled my chair back and forth on the linoleum as I picked at my fish, hoping my dad wouldn't notice that I hadn't finished my dinner. Since I was responsible for clearing the dinner plates, it wasn't unusual for me to covertly secrete any food I didn't want to swallow inside my Tupperware cup filled with milk. I was definitely a picky eater. After dinner, we made our way to our basement rec room to watch television. Later that night, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom carpet, listening to my Thriller record on my turntable. Even though I was only about 8, I loved music, especially Michael Jackson and Prince. My dad had a big album collection, which is probably why I developed an appreciation for music at a young age. One of my favorite pastimes was taking trips to Tower Records with my dad, where I got to pick out my own albums. I remember thinking the place was like a musical toy store, with rows and rows of magical albums covered in cellophane. On one trip, I picked out a Lionel Richie album, and on another, I selected Rick Springfield's Working Class Dog, featuring one of my favorite songs back then, Jessie's Girl. Our 1970 tri-level home had 3 bedrooms upstairs and a 4th in the basement. My parents' room was at the top of the stairs to the left. Then there was my room about halfway down the hall, and a guest room at the far end of the hallway. On this fall evening, I had gone to sleep in my twin bed just like I always did, but then something woke me up. A bad dream? No, I wet the bed. What happened next is burned deep into my memory. After waking my mom and telling her what happened, she helped me change into clean pajamas. Then she put me to bed in the guest room at the end of the hall because we were too tired to change my sheets in the middle of the night. The guest bedroom was chilly. It smelled old and musty, probably because we rarely used it and normally kept the door closed. There was a life-sized stuffed koala perched in the corner of the room like a sentinel, which made it a little creepy. The guest room was twice the size of mine, and the queen bed with its heavy wood frame and lattice headboard felt too big and unfamiliar to me. I crawled in between the cold sheets and tried to warm myself up by pulling the comforter up to my chin. I really wanted to be in my own bed, and I couldn't wait until morning. Despite my unease, I eventually faded off to sleep. Through my shallow haze of sleep, I could feel someone in the room with me. I opened my eyes and tried to focus, but it was difficult. As my vision began to acclimate to the darkness, I saw a figure at the foot of the bed. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but I quickly realized I was wide awake. It was a man. He was watching me. I couldn't make out his face. All I could see was a dark figure standing over me. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I wanted to scream for my dad, but I couldn't. Despite my desperate need to flee, no sounds came out of my mouth, and I was unable to move a muscle. I was frozen. I must have gasped, because the man eventually spoke. "I'm gonna go make some eggs," he said. Then he turned and walked out of the room and down the hall. Once I was sure he was gone, I sat up in bed and listened intently, waiting to hear the familiar creak of our stairs. I didn't hear anything, except the thunderous sound of my own heart beating uncontrollably in my ears. I was terrified that he would return, so after a few minutes, I worked up the courage to leave my bed. I quietly slid out from under the covers and slowly tiptoed to the door and peered down the hall. All clear. Then, I held my breath and sprinted to my parents' bedroom at the opposite end of the hall. I jumped onto the bed and tried to shake my dad awake. "Dad! Dad! There was a man in my room!" I yell-whispered. After what felt like an eternity, my dad showed some comprehension of what I was saying, though he didn't seem overly concerned. Maybe he thought I was having a nightmare, or maybe he thought I confused the koala with a person. He finally got up and made his way downstairs to look around. I followed him to the top of the stairs and watched in horror as he went from the living room to the kitchen, then to the basement. After checking the house, my dad came back upstairs and told me there was no one in our house. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely petrified. I knew there had been a man at the foot of my bed just a few minutes earlier. Where had he gone? There was absolutely no way I was going back to the guest room. I slept with my parents that night, feeling safe and secure in their bed, but still afraid of what was lurking in the dark recesses of my house. Who was the scary man? Would he come back? These troubling questions bounced around in my head like pinballs until I finally dozed off, although I didn't get much sleep. The following morning, I was still shaken. Things got worse when my dad discovered a pocket knife lying on a recliner in the basement rec room. My dad didn't recognize it, but I would find out later that he had an idea who it belonged to. As it turned out, my parents had noticed several odd things happening at our house in the days and weeks leading up to that night. My dad normally left cash on the kitchen table for my mom before leaving for his evening shift at Boeing. On one occasion, they discovered that $20 was missing from the kitchen table. My dad also found that the screen to our basement laundry room window had gone missing. Eventually, my dad caught the teenage boy who lived next door trying to break in one day when he thought my folks were at work. My dad was working swing shift, and my mom and I were home sick. My parents heard the doorbell ring in the middle of the day, but didn't get up to answer it immediately. A few minutes later, my dad went to the front door, but there was no one there. He then walked around to the side of our house and found the neighbor boy trying to break in through the laundry room window. According to urban legend, my dad put the fear of God into the boy, which likely included threats of serious permanent bodily injury, and he never stepped foot on our property again. My dad contacted his mother and learned that the boy had been running away and they hadn't seen him in weeks. After that, the missing window screen mysteriously made its way over our fence from the neighbor's yard. This was one of 2 instances in my childhood where I recall my dad laying down the law in our neighborhood. We had moved to our house in University Place, a suburb of Tacoma, when I was 6. UP is a quiet little town with a good school district. We must have raised some eyebrows when we moved in, since we were the only interracial family in our neighborhood. My mom had been a white teenage single mother to a half-black child in the 1970s, which was a challenge. I made my entrance into the world 8 weeks before my due date. My mom was at a drive-in movie with friends when her water broke. I was born at Tacoma's Madigan Army Medical Center, weighing 3 pounds, 7 ounces, and I spent the first few weeks of my life battling pneumonia in the pediatric ICU. Since I arrived so early, Mom's baby shower happened after my birth. She told me that a friend suggested she keep the tags on all the baby clothes so that she could return them if I died. Instead, Mom promptly cut them off and washed everything. My mom was determined to bring me home from the hospital alive. After I was born, she struggled to make ends meet and to stay in college. My biological father, whom I would meet for the first time at age 18, wasn't interested in sticking around. My mom met Jack Jackson when I was about 2. They dated for a couple of years and eventually married when I was 4. Jack adopted me after they were married, and I'm thankful to have such a great dad. Mom loves to tell the story about a time the 3 of us were riding in Dad's Oldsmobile. This was in the late 1970s, so all 3 of us were sitting on the car's front seat, with me in the middle. I was about 3 at the time, and Dad was apparently driving too fast for my liking. I turned my head to the left, glared at him, and said, "Slow down, Jackie, goddammit." My dad, Jack, is half black and half Japanese. No one would have ever guessed he wasn't my biological father. In fact, my brother, sister, and I look more alike than most full siblings. My other memory of my dad having to straighten someone out occurred a few years later after an incident at the school bus stop, which was the site of occasional hazing from neighborhood kids. One day, a white kid who routinely called me Michael Jackson told me that niggers aren't allowed at Chambers, our elementary school. Shocked and hurt, I went home and told my dad, who had a word, or more likely many words that would have included mother and fuck, with the boy's father. That was the last time he bothered me, but it wouldn't be the last time I experienced blatant racism. In the days following my frightening encounter with the stranger at the foot of my bed, I was jumpy and nervous about going to bed alone. My parents tried to downplay the situation, and we never really talked about what happened until many years later. Today, my dad will say that he didn't believe me when I first ran into his bedroom that night. He assumed I had a bad dream. It's hard for me to evaluate the situation from my parents' perspective. I continually think about what I would do if my daughter barged into my room in the middle of the night with a similar message. DEFCON 1, without a doubt. In their defense, I base that on my training and experience as a police officer and as a sex crimes detective, not an average citizen who isn't completely jaded and who doesn't think everyone and their brother is a sex offender. Looking back on the terrifying experience of finding a stranger at the foot of my bed, and knowing what I know now about sexual predators, I'm lucky he only wanted breakfast. That said, I do wonder how many other times he secretly crept around inside our house in the middle of the night, undetected. Chapter 2. Girls in the Park. Up until that point, I didn't know that evil existed, or that monsters were real. I loved riding my shiny red 10-speed Schwinn around my neighborhood in the summer of 1986. An 11-year-old tomboy through and through, I was sometimes mistaken for a boy thanks to my close-cropped curls. In 3rd grade, I asked my dad to teach me how to play softball. He was thrilled and insisted on teaching me how to play softball the right way. My lessons included the mantra, "Don't throw like a girl." By the time I began playing in a league, my teammates were afraid to pitch to me or even play catch because, according to my dad, she definitely did not throw or hit like a girl. I think I did throw and hit like a girl. He just wasn't aware of the power girls could have. He quickly learned. When I wasn't splashing around in the plastic wading pool in our front yard with my baby brother, I was pushing him around the house in a laundry basket that doubled as a mini race car. The hit song Kiss topped the Billboard charts that April, and my love for Prince was evident, thanks to a huge Purple Rain poster that hung in my room. By August, Madonna's Papa Don't Preach was burned into my brain thanks to continuous airplay on MTV. On any given night, my dad and I were in the driveway shooting hoops during that warm month of August. He really wanted me to play basketball on a team, but I had no interest. Neighborhood boys whizzed by on their skateboards, and some nights they stopped to say hi or join in the game. It was during this carefree time in my childhood that I heard about the little girls who'd been killed while playing in North Tacoma parks. One of the girls, 12-year-old Michelle Welch, was last seen alive by her sisters at Puget Park on March 26, 1986. Roughly 4 months later, 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian went missing while out for a bike ride at Point Defiance Park, and was found dead a few weeks later. I can't recall the exact moment when I heard about these horrifying disappearances and deaths. Thinking back on it now, it was just something everyone knew about. Point Defiance was the very same park where I'd spent so many wonderful summer days in the YMCA camp, combing the beach for seashells, turning over rocks in search of bright orange baby crabs, playing games in the woods, and making arts and crafts projects out of yarn and sticks collected from the park. On the afternoon of August 4th, 1986, 13-year-old Jennifer Bastian left her house for a bike ride in Point Defiance Park. The park was located in the 5400 block of North Pearl Street in Tacoma. Point Defiance Park is one of the largest parks in Washington state, surrounded by the Puget Sound and encompassing 760 acres, including a zoo, a beach, and densely forested trails surrounding a paved road called the 5 Mile Drive. 5 Mile Drive is a popular area for runners and cyclists, consisting of a one-lane road surrounded by densely wooded trails on both sides. All traffic is forced to move in a single direction, with turnouts that open into viewpoints overlooking the water. The trail allows cyclists, runners, and hikers to move off the roadway and also provide shortcuts between viewpoints. Jennifer Bastian would have been an 8th grader at Truman Middle School the following month. She left her house that balmy August afternoon on her shiny new 18-speed Schwinn to train for an upcoming ride in the San Juan Islands. Known as Jenny by family and friends, the blonde, blue-eyed teen wore a pixie haircut fashionable at the time. Jennifer was petite for her age, but that never held her back. She was a strong athlete and took her training seriously. The Bastian residence was located in the 2100 block of North Winifred, which was approximately 3 miles from the entrance to the park. She lived there with her parents, Ralph and Patty, and her older sister, Teresa. Ralph owned a travel agency, and Patty worked in sales for AT&T. 15-year-old Teresa worked as a YMCA day camp counselor that summer at Point Defiance. She was working in the park on August 4th. Before leaving the house that afternoon, Jennifer got permission to go to the park alone. Normally she rode with a buddy, but her riding partner wasn't available that day. After penning a note for her parents saying she would be back by 6:30 p.m., Jennifer set out for the picturesque park at about 2:30 in the afternoon. She never came home. 6:30 came and went. No sign of Jennifer. After Ralph and some of the neighbors searched the neighborhood, including her normal route to and from the park, Jennifer's mother raced home from work. The Bastians called Tacoma police to report Jennifer missing at 8:30 p.m. Ralph and Patty told Officer Dave Wiltfong their daughter was an avid cyclist who rode to the park several times a week to train. The report of a missing teenage girl from a North End park was too ominous to ignore, since 4 months earlier, 12-year-old Michelle Welch was abducted and murdered in another park located in the north end of Tacoma, just 3 miles away. Her killer was still on the loose. Had he struck again? At 1 a.m., Officer Wiltfong contacted Northwest Bloodhounds and requested their assistance. 2 dog handlers responded with their bloodhounds and obtained a couple of Jennifer's personal belongings from Patty to use as scent articles. The dogs tracked Jennifer's scent from her home to the park, and by 5:30 a.m., the dogs completed their track. They picked up her scent on the 5 Mile Drive, but they didn't find her. The 5 Mile Drive of Point Defiance Park was closed to the public August 5th through 7th, while police conducted a massive search which involved approximately 230 searchers each day. The Bastian family and their friends handed out missing persons posters at the park entrance, and Patty's employer, AT&T, provided 4 primitive brick-style cell phones to the command center for use during the search. Search and rescue volunteers from all over the state combed the trails under a canopy of towering evergreens, while searchers on ATVs and horseback traversed acres of thick underbrush. After the 3-day search by hundreds of volunteers, there was still no sign of Jennifer. There were several reported sightings on the day she went missing, including the following reports. Between 2:30 and 3 p.m., a park employee called Jennifer's parents and advised them he had seen Jennifer riding her bike near the Owen Beach entrance. Around 4:10 p.m., 3 boys who knew Jennifer reported they passed her going the opposite direction on 5 Mile Drive. They said a white male adult riding a racing-type Huffy 10-speed and wearing mirrored sunglasses was riding close behind her. When she sped up or slowed down, the man did the same. A sketch of this man was developed as a possible suspect, but he was never identified. At 4:20 p.m., a woman reported seeing a young white female believed to be Jennifer pulling into the second viewpoint past Owen Beach. She described the girl as wearing a blue or purple swimsuit, shorts, and a bicycle helmet. This clothing description is consistent with what Jennifer was wearing. A day camp counselor reported seeing a girl matching Jennifer's description at Owen Beach around 3:15, then again later between 4 and 4:40, riding her bike in front of the lodge inside the park. Between 3 and 5 p.m., 2 young men reported they were drinking beer at the Dalco Passage viewpoint when a girl matching Jennifer's description rode up and had a conversation with them. They said she had taken her helmet off and it fell on the ground. She drank from a water bottle and told them she was training for an upcoming bike ride. One of the men recalled that she was wearing either 2 silver bracelets or a necklace looped twice around her wrist. Jennifer was, in fact, wearing 3 sterling silver bracelets that day. They were a gift from her dad, souvenirs from a trip to Mexico. Jennifer and her mother always wore silver bracelets. Patty Bastian still wears hers every day. 5:30 p.m. A man reported seeing a girl consistent with Jennifer's description approaching the park entrance from the 5 Mile Drive. He said he noticed her because she looked so young and had such professional-looking bike equipment. At about 5:45 p.m., another man reported seeing a young white female on a bicycle on the 5 Mile Drive near the zoo. His description of her appearance and clothing was consistent with Jennifer. Around 6 p.m., a woman reported seeing a girl fitting Jennifer's description in the bowl area of the park. Her clothing description was consistent with Jennifer's. All of these sightings confirmed Jennifer had made it to the park and had ridden her bike along the 5 Mile Drive, but none of this information helped police find her. Days turned into weeks. Psychics called in with visions of where Jennifer was located. Dozens of citizen tips were followed up, but nothing concrete came of them. Early on, there was speculation that Jennifer had been abducted by someone in a black van and had been taken out of the park. This was based on information from a man who reported he was walking with his daughter on 5 Mile Drive between 2 and 2:30 p.m. and witnessed a young girl matching Jennifer's description, riding a bike, being forced into a black van. The man reported hearing a male inside the van say, "Didn't I tell you to get into the van?" Then the girl and her bike were shoved into the van by a white male on a bike. This info was disseminated to the media, and dozens of tips were called in regarding suspicious black vans. The van was later ruled out as being related, based on numerous credible sightings of Jennifer in the park after this allegedly occurred. At 8 p.m. on August 26th, a man called the park police to report that he was jogging with the YMCA running club on a trail near the 5 Mile Drive and noticed a foul odor. Park police, along with Tacoma police officers, arrived and attempted to locate the source of the odor with no success. A police canine was called in, but still could not locate the source of the odor. At 2 p.m. on August 28th, a German Shepherd search dog made a discovery in a wooded area off 5 Mile Drive between the roads and the cliffs, south of the Gig Harbor viewpoint, about 150 feet off the main path. The location was well hidden and difficult to access. The body of a young female was found inside a cave-like hollowed-out area within the brush and trees, obscured from view by the nearby trail. 24 days after she was missing, Jennifer was finally located. According to Dr. Mark Papworth, Thurston County Deputy Coroner called to the scene, the hiding spot looked like it had been prepared ahead of time. He also wrote in his report that he believed the crime was carefully organized and that it had been practiced in fantasy or with a previous victim. Jennifer's bike was located southwest of her body, toward the cliff, lying in the brush just south of the park. The bike was covered with fern fronds that had dried up and turned brown. Members of the Green River Task Force had become skilled at outdoor homicide investigation, so they were called in to assist Tacoma police detectives with processing the crime scene. At the time of her discovery, Jennifer was found lying on her back. Her swimsuit and shorts had been pulled down around her right ankle. It appeared Jennifer had been posed, and based on the positioning of her body, it appeared she had been sexually assaulted. Her bicycle helmet was found in her saddlebag, but she was still wearing her socks, tennis shoes, and riding gloves. At her autopsy, Jennifer was described as a white female, 13 years old, 4 feet 8 inches, and estimated to weigh 70 to 75 pounds, with short blonde hair. Very little was able to be determined during the post-mortem exam due to decomposition, but a thin ligature was found looped around Jennifer's neck. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death asphyxia secondary to ligature strangulation, and concluded the appearance of Jennifer's clothing indicated sexual assault. When the news of the discovery broke, Tacoma was in a panic. In the span of 5 months, not 1 but 2 young girls had been found brutally murdered in North Tacoma parks. Just a few months before Jennifer disappeared, 12-year-old Michelle Welch was found raped and murdered in a wooded gulch adjacent to a small neighborhood park not far from Point Defiance. Both girls were blue-eyed blondes who'd been out riding their bikes when they went missing. Michelle's murder was still unsolved. Was there a serial killer on the loose? This was a turning point in the city. Parents began keeping their children indoors. Kids weren't allowed to play outside alone. The parks weren't safe anymore. The innocence of many was shattered thanks to these tragedies. I didn't know Jennifer or Michelle, but that didn't matter. The idea that something so unbelievable could happen to a young girl out riding her bike was terrifying to me. My friends heard about what happened, too. We were scared to ride our bikes and scared to walk alone, afraid it could happen to us. Grown-ups also took notice, and the days of free-range parenting became a thing of the past in Tacoma. The senseless slayings changed the way parents raised their kids and the way kids looked at the world. Up until that point, I didn't know that evil existed or that monsters were real. The stories were all over the newspapers and on TV. What if the killer was still out there? Would he do it again? Before the killings, I was a carefree kid, oblivious to the dangers lurking beyond my safe, middle-class suburban neighborhood. After learning that 2 girls had been murdered while they were out doing the same kinds of things I like to do, riding their bikes, I was scared. Playing in the woods now gave me the creeps. A couple of years later, in junior high, I occasionally walked to school by myself when I missed the bus or couldn't get a ride. My route required me to walk past a wooded gulch, which always made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. As I approached, my heart would race, and I would cross the street in order to put some distance between me and the tree line, then walk as fast as I could to get past it. Even though it seemed ridiculous, I always pictured some deranged lunatic hiding in the trees, waiting to grab me as I walked past. That constant fear was embedded in me at an early age, from the time the man was at the end of my bed to learning about Jennifer and Michelle being found murdered. It's hard for me to think back to a time in my childhood when the mystery surrounding Michelle and Jennifer wasn't in the backdrop. It was just something that everyone knew about, a town tragedy that shaped our childhood. My mom likened it to her teenage years when the Ted killer was on the loose. She couldn't tell me when she first heard about the missing young women, but she had been warned about Ted, just as every other young female.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?